Hi, my name is Layla Latif. I am a practicing advocate and I'm a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, where we do a lot of research around taxation, fiscal policy, and the way forward for African countries going forward. So there's this whole question around where do we go forward now that the finance bill has been rejected. And there have been a lot of provisions in the finance bill that were subject to controversy, but there were equally other provisions in the finance bill that were really, really good in terms of plugging the loopholes insofar as illicit financial flows are concerned, and also from the perspective of raising domestic sources of revenue. Now, where do we go forward from here, right? I think there's a lot of discussion about the impact of taxes and the sort of redistribution that the taxes that we collect can have an impact on public services and also social welfare going forward. So what do? I think what we need to do is to really engage. And by engagement, it's not just engaging the general public per se, but it's also to bring into the room specific experts and key stakeholders that really understand the economic well-being of a society, what it means from the national level, from the regional level, the continental level, and also the international discussions that are taking place that are going to have an impact on fiscal policy in Kenya. So these conversations are very important to have from two perspectives. Number one, how do we raise enough sources of revenue to finance our development needs and to service debt, which is a really, boiling point at this particular moment. And the other issue is like, how do we curb illicit financial flows? Now, what I want to discuss in terms of going forward is the DRM aspect. And I don't really want to focus on what we can mobilize at the national level, but I want to focus the conversation on what do we need to do at the international platform so as to secure a broader fiscal space for our nation. So how are we supposed to look at the design of international taxation so that we are able to net in more profits for purposes of taxation into our own country? So we've got digital business models, we've got multinational corporations that are getting in the realm of digitalization. How are they making their money? How are their profits being taxed? Where are they deriving their revenue from? If they're deriving their revenue from Kenya, is Kenya able to tax part of those profits? So in the finance bill that has passed, we had the proposal to introduce the significant economic presence tax at 20%. That's a good thing. But then how much of that tax can be generated for us? We have the explanation about bringing in the minimum effective tax rate at 15%. Is that really an ideal percentage? Well, when you look at the average of all African countries in terms of how much corporate income tax is, the average is at about 28%. So if we're thinking about taxing multinational corporations, the minimum effective tax rate at 15%, are we doing ourselves a justice? We are not. So these are the conversations I think we need to have going forward in terms of the minimum effective tax rate. 15% or 30%? Or do we meet midway in terms of 20%? Because what generates more revenue for us is what we can get to tax of those multinational corporations going forward. So for me, the main take-home message is let's look at international taxation. Where are the problems in international taxation? Let's fix them. Even if it's in transfer pricing, what do we need to do to ensure that we're not going ahead into transfer mispricing? If it's aspects of illicit financial flows, we're trying to avoid instances of trade misinvoicing, false invoicing, thin capitalization. All these are really important technical tax concepts that we need to understand, and we need to find a way in which we can now plug them in so that we can generate more sources of revenue going forward. Thank you for listening to me.